We have today two, Silvia das Fadas. Silvia, she's a filmmaker, a researcher, and a curator herself. And she lived in Los Angeles and all this cycle, as we know from previous sessions. Andy chose Los Angeles like the team that unifies all these cycles. So we could not have a better guest than you, Sylvia. So thank you so much. And I leave you a little to talk together, or if you want, I just want, because we have been talking about you, Sylvia, even in your absence.
Really?
Yeah. And mainly from the beginning, because it's something that Andy, in the first session, trying a way to explain to us, or the choosing of film experiments instead of experimental film. So the question, what is this of experimental film? Why experiments, and is explained to us quite well why experiments and not experimental. But you, as someone that will say that you are experimental filmmaker, it's kind of, probably short definition or basic definition of things. So that question I would love that you both or you, Sylvia, will at the point touch or talk a little bit about it. The other thing that we talk during these sessions and that I would like to listen to you, Sylvia, the question of the digital and the analogical. And today it was again another session where the question was clear, namely in the second film. Um, so you really need the noise and scratch and keep the analogical, and so because you are precisely one, I think, of the persons that still work with 60 millimeter, and so with analogical and not digital. So these two questions that in a way cross all these 6 weeks at the moment, wherever you feel like it. But I would like to listen, Sylvia, about it. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Isabella. Thank you, Ben, for the invitation and for this incredible series that I wish I could have come to all of them, even though I know most of the films. Thank you for having me in the last screening.
Well, thank you for coming all the way from São Luís to be here.
From the sun.
I mean, maybe we can start on the specific, meaning we just saw LF in the digital copy. You have seen it. In fact, it was a film you saw before you went to Los Angeles to study. Did you sense something missing?
Sure. Well,
Well, what are we missing?
I mean, there's several things, but I had the chance of seeing Aleph for the first time, programmed by Alexandre Estrela in O Porto, back then, I think, I don't quite remember, 2010, 2011, maybe 2011.
Or even before.
The year I can't recall, but it was
Yeah.
right before
Yeah.
I moved to Los Angeles. So Aleph, in a very special conditions and place, because I don't know if you've been to Porto. It was a sailors union, old sailors union transformed by lived occupied by artists, artist studios. And for that particular screening, Aleph was projected in a hidden place, a desk. There was a desk that was a fake desk that used to be a hideout for Pete, for those who were escaping the political police. And so you would open the desk and there were some steps, some staircase, and in a very tiny place, Aleph was being screened on 60 millimeter, I think. And so just a few people were able to go down
And to see.
and experience the film. And that actually quite resembled the way Wallace Berman used to share
Show
these
and
works.
share.
Which
I was under the impression he never showed the film.
he showed, he used to screen it onto his fridge. In,
Okay.
often really just for one person at a time or few people, but always in a very intimate environment.
Yeah.
And the Aleph was shot on 8 millimeter, not even
Yeah.
60 millimeter. There was parts of it that were shot in 60 millimeter because for a few years he lived in, he escaped from Los Angeles into San Francisco. And I think Jordan Belson shared the camera with him, a 60 millimeter camera. So we shot parts of it in 60 millimeter that then later were reduced to 8 millimeter, which is something not so often, because he thought that was his medium, the right format for this film that he spent 10 years. He said, I think 15 even. Reshooting the film and so just to before I forget this, something really important for me is the scale in relation to this film. I doubt if you should be watching this film
So,
this scale,
such a big,
such a big
Yeah.
screen, because it was really intimate, and so I think it's really different if we could see it smaller and closer to the image.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. Well, I know Stan Brakhage is the one who transferred the 8 millimeter back to 16 as a way of preserving it, because of course it's
True.
black and white 8 millimeter with paint and rub-on letters and all of these things on top of it. Well, the color that we see is what he physically applied to black and white. So I assume it's been shown as a 16 millimeter film, but I don't
Afterwards.
quite know. Yeah.
afterwards.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think while it was in, while Wallace Berman was alive, it was shown in 18, the original was shown in 1890.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it seems Wallace Berman wasn't too interested in the commerce of art or exhibition, as
Not at all.
he's known as an assembly artist and is famous for the Semina publication, which was just, he refused to sell it, just given to friends or people he thought were interesting. And often in random order, because it wasn't really a magazine all the time, it was like a pouch of drawings and photographs.
With a lot of
And
poetry.
poems is
Yes.
central, yeah,
Yeah, poetry is central,
Yeah.
and collage, and
yeah.
works by other artists.
Mhm.
that's another thing, that film of Aleph from Alan Berman, in your choice of program, it's one of the few, what we call artists. All the others, we call them filmmakers. Of course, it's distinction. The filmmaker artist, it's all, it's
Yeah.
another discussion.
Yeah.
It's a way to the question of experimental or
Yeah, classifications.
our classifications, but it's curious because it's clear. You had been invited from a museum, to do a cycle about Los Angeles. At the time, I told you experimental film. You said experiments, but in a way you didn't, probably because it's not so interesting to you, and for me, of course, it's interesting that you should things that I don't know well, or that you are more interested. But it's curious that Aleph is one of the few films of all cycle that was done by so-called artist and not a filmmaker. It was uh, something that
It's not a film I have like a long relationship to. In fact, I only discovered it recently and digitally, unfortunately. Um, but yeah, I mean, the emphasis on the sort of outsiders of the outside, you know. I it's the documentary side of experimental that I wanted to, and the social side that comes out in his work here, regardless of what he's called. Yeah, the repurposing of pop imagery, which has a subcultural, even disturbing quality, of course, of the ILF, as opposed to official pop art. Incidentally, Andy Warhol visited.
He shot a film there.
Yeah, he shot, and I
his-
wanted to
his
show that.
backyard.
Yeah,
Tarzan
Warhol
and Jane.
shot a film in Wallace Berman's backyard. Well, a piece of a film called Tarzan and Jane Regained, sort of. Sort of.
Into Tiger Canyon.
Yeah, and I really wanted to show that, but it's not possible to really just show one Warhol. You have to do an entire retrospective one. So that was that. But
But Andy, I think now that I'm thinking of,
Yeah.
of Aleph in relation to you
I am.
and your own work, you are also a collage artist. Could we say that?
Not, I don't know, artists
Yes,
are on, certainly not on film, but no, it's something else. It's, I admire the applied art aspect of it, which I know is an old-fashioned way to refer to it, but
Or I should say, you use, rephrasing it, you use collage as a way of doing film criticism.
sometimes, yes.
Thinking about film through collage.
Yeah,
the way of
yeah.
collage.
I program that way. I mean, you know, sometimes it's done as a visual thing first, and then the resonances
I
come
don't
or
call that
not.
collage, I call that creative. How you know, how
But
you
it starts with
Are you
juxtaposition.
put a film
Yeah.
after another film, how you create a kind of narrative in a program.
Yeah.
For example, today, I was surprised that you decided to return in the last session to Charlie Chaplin.
Oh, I thought
Um,
that would be expected
No,
from me. I'm glad I did because it brought everyone so much joy on the first screening when
Yeah.
we showed Chaplin in here. Like,
yes,
I don't know if it was a surprise or just the film itself or
yeah,
what.
both.
Yeah. But to program in this space, it interested me to mix all these different approaches, cinematographic practices, you know. It's an experiment in itself, each session, to bang them together, you know. To put a film like Charlie Chaplin's film, well, Max Sennett and Charlie Chaplin's film, presented in the context of experimental cinema or movie experiments. It makes us think a little differently, perhaps, and receive it differently than we would as just,
Yeah, sure.
oh yeah. And likewise, putting Wallace Berman next to
Yeah,
The Exiles,
yeah,
which are made, well, Wallace Berman begins to make his film around the same time. So, that me and my convictions, I don't, as a programmer, I wouldn't be capable of showing a more abstract film and not then going to reality. I think we always have to go back to reality.
even if his art starts in a way, I don't know if you say, but a way he films the faces, photos, it's quite, faces become almost like sculptures.
In
The
in the
Exiles,
Exiles, yeah.
in the beginning.
Yeah.
Black and white. This is are like almost masks, it's like
Yeah.
sculptures. So there is, in the beginning, then
Yeah.
it goes all intoxication.
It has an
It's all about
extraordinary
intoxication.
quality of sort of not having any subtext or symbolism, I don't think. And Tom Anderson wrote a great thing that he wrote a great article about the Exiles, in which he said drama is replaced by description. And what's compelling about the film, I mean, it's just that pure description, to a sublime level, perhaps. Do you agree?
Yes, I think so. I think there's this description of a sense of, in the strong sense of place,
Yeah.
no? Of really see Bunker Hill before it's went through a massive destruction.
Yeah, destruction. Yeah.
And at the same time, a huge sense, a deep sense of displacement of this particular community of the Native Americans.
Yeah.
But what is curious is, for me at least, it's like exile from, it's Los Angeles like a city of exiles.
Yes.
And exiles of Native Americans. So it's Native Americans that feel, in a way, exile in Los Angeles. And at the same time, you have an exile like Charlie Chaplin that was an exile in Los Angeles, as we know. In a way. So for me, that was kind of a connection that I find between the first and the last film. But
Well, it's also showing like things for the first time. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, well, it's 1914, the Charlie Chaplin.
yeah,
That doesn't mean everything they were doing was for the first time, obviously.
Yeah.
But in this point in Chaplin's work, he's still trying to convince Max Sennett that doing a chase is not the only thing you can do in a comedy, and that he believed in personality, that transcends everything, personality, you know, and that you should get more bits of business. But they said, no, it's too theatrical, we just do a chase, you know. And so, so he would, upon like entering or exiting the frame, he would do little gags that he knew, because he was observing them editing and learning how to edit by watching other people, the editors in the studio. They couldn't cut that, you know. And in this film especially, you can see he's a bit more of a grotesque Chaplin. He's not quite.
yeah, it's more.
Even in the first film we shot of Chaplin, we saw in the first kid auto races in Venice. I think even it's the first appearance of Chaplin in the tramp
Yeah,
costume. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's well known for that.
yeah,
But in that film, he's almost everything that he turned out to be. You know,
Yes.
I mean, as a character, where he can be, as I think Max Sennett said, like a gentleman, a duke, a musician, a scientist, or convince you that he is one. And at the same time, you know, is not above picking up cigarette butts and stealing candy from babies, you know.
Well, he's a riot, no? By being there, no?
Yeah,
You can expect
yeah.
anything.
I love in his own autobiography, he described his tramp outfit as everything in contradiction. And if you just visualize it, like the hat is really small, but the shoes are big. The vest is tight, but the pants are massive, you know. And also in the way he moves through life, you know. But what I meant to connect that to was this sense that the Exiles is the first time you're seeing the inner life of a Native American in the film. And it's done with this technique of the inner monologue, you know. The film was made, was scripted completely with the people we see, Yvonne and Homer. And the voiceovers, the inner monologue, are actually interviews that were conducted with them, that were then overlaid, you know.
Also because it was before direct sound, no? There's a...
61.
Well,
I think
it
there
could have
was...
been possible, but
I mean, there
no.
was direct sound, but
He
the,
used a
the
loud
sound of the
air
camera,
reflex,
yes,
yeah.
was so
Yeah.
they couldn't use any. It was so loud that they couldn't use
Yeah.
any or barely any of it.
Yeah.
The sound recorded.
Mhm. But, and then he turns it into like an ontological principle because, you know, there's then the whole bits of dialogue that are supposed to be synchronized that are so badly, you know, I don't know, but so out of synchronization that it kind of bleeds into the interiors and back again, and
It increases the sense of displacement.
yeah,
No? Not
yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Even choosing the tunnel and the.
Oh yeah, the angel's flight.
Yeah.
It's
It's a beautiful thing to see.
yeah, yeah. And,
Still there.
Yeah, still there.
I don't think it's functioning
It
anymore.
moved.
Yeah, they moved it. Yeah, it doesn't have much of a social purpose anymore. It's more tourist.
There's a lot of cars, and we always think on Los Angeles, a place of cars.
Mm-hmm.
But in this film, we see people walking.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's, also a city of, or a cinema that shows people that walk.
Yeah.
There is something that Tom Anderson mentioned, brings to the fore as something
Mhm.
political
Yeah.
about this.
In his film, Los Angeles Plays Itself, which, if you don't know, is about the representation of Los Angeles in films, mostly in commercial films. You saw that film before you went to Los Angeles?
Yes.
Or after? Yeah.
Before. And I think it was shown or programmed by Pedro Costa at Cinemateca Portuguesa.
The Exiles or
The Exiles.
Los Angeles? Ah,
Exiles.
okay, yeah, yeah.
If
The Carte
my
Blanche.
memory doesn't
No,
trick me,
yeah.
I think I saw it there
Maria
for the
said
first
that,
time
yeah.
on the 50th anniversary of the Cinemateca.
Oh,
or something.
Oh, I see.
I think
Mhm.
I saw it before, and then
Mhm.
But see, but I remember you living in Los Angeles, and you'd never get a car.
That's right.
no, I was very obstinate about that. Well,
It
I
was like
remember
a
you
decision
didn't-
not to have
It was
a
a
car.
decision.
Yeah,
You didn't
not
even
to-
like to ride with friends sometimes. You must take public transportation for the first couple of years. No?
Yeah, it was a political decision of
Yes.
everyone tells me I can't walk, and that's not true
Mhm.
because there's, all the Latino communities, all the
Millions. The
leaders that
millions.
do
yeah.
walk and take public
Yes.
transportation. So it's not just a city of cars.
Yeah. The problem is CalArts, which is one of the reasons you were in Los Angeles, maybe not the only reason, is very far from where the films are screening, for instance, in the center.
A lot of rides. and
There's no
public
center, but
transportation.
at UCLA and at or downtown, which are 20 miles away. Yeah. But what took you to Los Angeles exactly?
Well, I went to CalArts to do my master, my MFA in film. I really wanted to make films on film, on 60mm, and by then, here, it was not possible to... I started filming in Super 8. My grandfather had a Super 8 camera at home, so I started watching films through him, and the camera was there, so I started using it. But then I saw, and I must say that Dog's Kingdom played a really important role in that. I saw many films by, I don't know, James Benning, Robert Vance, Leanne Schmidt, that either were teaching at CalArts or had been students at CalArts. So
Yeah.
for me it became clear that I wanted to learn the craft and do this documentary, political leftist films with a strong sense of place. It was a wealth of abundance of films that I was really fond of,
Yeah.
really resonated, and that I had the chance of seeing here, not just Ox Kingdom, but Ox Lisboa, at the Cinematheque.
Mhm.
So there was a very rich, there still is, film culture here that made me want to move to Los Angeles to learn how to make films with the 60 millimeter.
Yeah.
Because the schools, there was no, the film school or ARCU, or there was no possibility of learning the craft of 60 millimeter. Now I think it's changed. It is changing again. Or I mean, there's a lot of renewed interest with 60 millimeter. I have to say, last month I was teaching at the film school. A workshop on 60 millimeter editing, no analog editing. So
At Arco.
not at ARCO, at
Oh, I'm sorry.
Cinema school.
This one.
Cinema School,
Yeah.
Escola Superior de Cinema.
Cinema.
And yeah, I mean, back then I had to reach out to the Portuguese Cinematheque to ask to learn how to project films, and at ANIM, at the archive, how to learn the craft, to learn how to handle film, edit
Yeah.
35 millimeters, 60 millimeters, before even touching the camera and film. That was in Los Angeles.
You were a projectionist at CalArts for a while. Were you a projectionist at other cinemas in Los Angeles? I can't remember.
No, just at CalArts.
Okay.
That was part of my scholarship, my full scholarship,
Yeah.
being a
Okay.
projectionist.
Yeah. There's like a half-second shot in Aleph of the Henry Fonda Theater, which at the time was called the Pix, P-I-X. Tribute.
Didn't see it.
On Hollywood Boulevard. I mean, it's not even,
Okay.
it's not a place we went. It was changed. They made the inclination of the floor flat, and they stopped showing movies and doing rock and roll shows or music shows since decades.
Maybe it's interesting to know that I knew before going to Los Angeles, I already knew Andy through a director through his blog, Kinoslang. It was huge in film culture. An important contribution to film culture that I had the chance of. So even before we met in
Yeah.
person, I just read your blog already.
Perhaps we should open to the questions. It was part of the cycle, idea that we could talk about the films that we saw in the end, like the old Cine Club way. So, please, any comment, doesn't need to be a question. Okay, so
Energy of Charlie Chaplin. I was watching this morning with my son.
Yeah.
The Lego Ninjago. It's like an animation with the Lego animation,
Okay.
and the energy is like quite same. And I was kind of surprised. This was very fast cut and falling, chasing.
The
and
pace, the rhythm.
Yeah, pace and
Yeah.
rhythm. It looks like it's a Ninjago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a cartoons for the kids. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
I
Max
was very
Sennett.
happy to
That's
watch
Max
it.
Sennett. I wanted to show more Max Sennett. I mean, he invented surrealism, and helped invent cinema. But it's impossible to get good copies of his early films, the ones I wanted to show anyway. Chaplin films, yeah, because it's Chaplin. You can find some, but that makes me want to share that, in the Chaplin we just saw, that when we see Keystone Studios and behind is a beautiful building. That's actually not Keystone Studios. It's like, it's a opulent apartment house on Wilshire Boulevard in the Beaux-Arts architectural style. I guess Sennett didn't think the actual Keystone Studio, which is in Echo Park, or what they used to call Edendale, was, well, it maybe looked too prosaic, you know. But I bring it up because on the reverse of the Keystone Studio, you had just, you can see a picture of it, just a line of cars face out to the street, so that as soon as they got an idea, they could jump in the car and go right to the ocean, left to the mountain, out to downtown, or up to Glendale, you know. They worked very fast. And with this immediacy, you know. Yeah. Yeah, Mac Sennett was brilliant in filming real events and then making a film around it, which is portrayed in the film. You know, it's a film about itself. Another justification for its, you know, it's not a structural film, but almost.
Almost. And we see the exiles also know the cinema, she going
Yeah.
to the cinema and walking downtown where we also see all those movie theaters
Yeah,
that nowadays are something else. And
They are.
Stores.
The building is
churches
still
are
there.
closed, but the buildings are there.
you began to make a film of those facades.
Yeah, I portrayed those
Yeah,
movie theaters.
I remember that, you showed me some shots, incredible shot of, I think it was the Los Angeles
Mhm.
movie theater.
With the choir.
And but you didn't explain it, and it just looked like a group of people singing at the bottom of the frame in front of a movie theater. I didn't understand at the time, they were going to church. It's a church now, like Imperial, the old cinema.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was fascinated by that particular street in downtown because there are so many, I don't remember now, 5 movie
Yeah.
theaters, and they are all something else. We couldn't see films. I haven't never seen a film there. We saw films else in other places,
Yeah.
other neighborhoods.
Well, there's one called the $1 Million Theater that
Sometimes
shows films. I saw Gun Crazy there or
Very
something,
seldom.
film noir. It's a movie palace, I mean, it's incredible.
I brought a book, today I'm a guest, but whenever I curate films, and I do it in the countryside where I live, I always like to bring books that relate to the universe of the films. And today, I could have brought others, but I thought of bringing alternative projections, experimental film in Los Angeles, 1945, 1980, just to share. I mean, it's a great resource, and I've seen, when I moved to Los Angeles in 2011, it was exactly the start. It was a very lucky time to be there, because it was the start of this program, Pacific Standard Time, by the Getty Museum, the Getty Foundation, and so.
And Bank of America. Let's be
And
honest.
Bank of America. But that helped curate a lot of incredible exhibitions, film retrospectives. I saw Alden, LA Rebellion,
Yeah.
then, and Los Angeles Film Forum programmed, which was, still is a very important
I know.
place or minor cinema where you can see films, experimental cinema.
What is experimental cinema?
We'll get to that.
For you, Silvia,
I guess it can be anything that is made with freedom, or it's traversed by a sense of freedom, formal and not only formal, but films that take risks. That's why I think. Salvation Hunters can be, a classical Hollywood can also be experimental. It depends how we look at it, how we program it, how we curate it, with which films we pair it with.
Do you think of it as a practitioner? This term?
Experimental?
Do you use it in
to define yourself, your work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, between documentary, non-fiction, experimental. I feel more at home in experimental. I feel more at home
So
because
you
it's open.
associate documentary to experimental.
Not all documents, not all documentary films are experimental. Some are very square, or.
But fiction,
that's,
fiction can be experimental.
for sure. I mean, exactly.
You've proved.
Wait for that.
For sure, as experimental as any documentary or artist film or
Yeah.
whatever. That means these are categories, no? They are
Yeah.
meant to be deconstructed or played around.
And what make you to choose a kind of real melancholic and old support like the 60 millimeters to work with?
Well, for me it's not old and it's not melancholic.
Okay.
It's my medium of choice.
But why? Why you?
I mean, Super 8 was too small in scale or to handle to edit, even though it's great format in itself and I have a lot of respect for it. But 60 millimeter and 35 is out of reach. 60 millimeter was just perfect. I can handle it. I can carry the camera, carry the equipment, all by myself. I can edit with the Steam Pack. I can have a portable projector. I can be autonomous, almost autonomous in the. And I mean, I think our lives are so digital already. I don't want to make films in my computer. That's one reason, and I really feel that everything about 16 millimeter. I believe in the medium, and for me it's really contemporary still. There's still, I mean, there are of course sometimes it's hard to show films on 16 millimeter, but that's also why it's important to stick to it or to show it. And I don't think a technology should come and overtake or erase previous technology. That didn't happen with in painting, for instance. So I think this is digital. It's really capitalist endeavor. No, and I think so. I'm very happy that so many younger filmmakers want to learn the craft of 60 millimeter, and they're still using it. And,
I was provoking. Questions to Sylvia Ward, Wendy?
or impressions about the films, or even, I don't know if I may dare, this is the last screening of this film series, so if you have something to share, or I don't know, any gift for Andy, perhaps. No, in the sense that it's the last, I haven't seen the whole program, but maybe some of you have been here before and saw the.
It's just a little commentary on the Exiles, because you were saying the thing about Tom saying that's a film that replaces drama with description. But one thing I think one thing that's interesting is because it has this quality of pure description, but at the same time it sort of describes inside this community two very different ways of living, and then sort of creates a bit of a subtle drama in that juxtaposition between both things. And I just a comment on it.
Yeah. I see. I don't know that it's not parallel editing, that old technique, but yeah.
You might even like in the metal space, because there's a shot that I'm remembering right now that it cuts from that valley they are, and it cuts to the. It has like a transition, this fade into the city itself.
Yeah.
So it even has that, even in the way it shows the place, there's a sort of contrast between
Yeah.
different places, you know,
Mhm.
which I thought was very interesting. It's very, you know, complex in that way, I think,
Mhm.
in those games of, because again, it has a very sort of raw quality of those images themselves, the way they're framed. It's very, there's this place, and then
Yeah.
there's this other place.
No handheld shots in the.
Yeah, yeah,
Striking.
yeah.
Um, yeah, there's a repetitious structure to it as well, which, the Native American novelist and poet Sherman Alexie, who made many presentations of the exiles, and I recommend reading or listening to him talk about it. Actually likened to chanting, when you repeat certain corners of the street and with these variations, and of course culminating in what they actually do on that Hill X, which is
It's now a stadium.
this Dodger Stadium, the baseball stadium, yeah. And it was apparently it was built while the film was still being edited, yeah. But what they're doing there is called 49ing, and it's not an ancient tradition among Native Americans, but more like late 19th, early 20th century, that they would go to a high place and bells, drums, and let loose, and it was like originally like preparation for war was the symbolism of it, or the energy of it. So again, it's not something created for the film, yeah. But I have to think about what you said though, because I didn't quite see it as like alternating so much, but
But it is.
yeah. I mean, they're from different tribes too, it's not like they're all from the same reservation. Just thought, maybe that's worth pointing out. You know, I think
But
the-
Mackenzie, tell me what was his relationship with
Oh, yeah.
the American natives or Native American?
Well, he went to Arizona to a reservation and was so impressed by the conditions, and
Conditions.
living conditions, and how
Not
the
impressed,
people-
shocked.
shocked,
Yeah.
shocked is the word.
Yeah.
And how many of younger people were moving to the city, to Los Angeles, and particularly to this neighborhood, Bunker Hill, where he had already previously shot a film. That is called Bunker Hill.
Oh, yeah, short film
So-
made before this, yeah,
Before this one.
quite great. I recommend
Yeah,
seeing
really
that.
film
Completely
with the
different.
communities.
Yeah, it's more about pensioners, the people who live in Bunker Hill, majority old pensioners, and it uses the same inner monologue technique, interviews. But,
So he said, so he wanted that experience in Arizona in the reservation made him want to make this film,
yeah,
and also naively became one of them, as if
Yeah.
that was possible. But
Yeah.
he reflects. He made this also master thesis at USC, I think.
USC,
At
he went
USC,
there.
about the making of this film. So he has a whole master thesis about where he reflects about all the process and the making of the film.
Yeah.
And here, I didn't mention before, when I mentioned this film, there's a really nice essay by Ross Lippmann, who was the restorer, who made the restoration of this film. So he has a whole chapter by Ross Lippmann on the exiles that I also recommend if you'd like to know more about the film.
Yeah, Kent Mackenzie was a white, he's a white man born in London, raised in New York, and came to Los Angeles to get into film,
From another Israel.
True. I guess. and went to USC. I think it was said that pretty much everyone on the crew was of like mind. They were all 2 or 3 years out of film school and not getting any work because the work they wanted to do had too much to do with reality. And it's not like that was coming out of nowhere, you know. They admired and they list as their his influences like Humphrey Jennings, you know, Robert Flaherty, Joris Evans, Georges Rouquier, is that how you pronounce it? You know, Farabig. If you think of that, this you know, fiction documentary, making documentary through fiction and vice versa, it you know it has a tradition and forebears.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I just mentioned that because for a long time this film was seen as like coming out of nowhere. How is this possible that somebody filmed like that? But there is some precedent. It's the subject that is unique, and at the same time not. You know, I think it's people as people. It's goes beyond identity even, although it's quite important, of course. But I've gotten away from the point. But
So, as it's the last session, we'd like to invite you to have a glass of spumante and some Easter almonds in our mezzanine. Thank you for coming during this marvelous 6 weeks. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Isabel.